How are you? And
Great.
this topic just blew me away because one of the things I was always jealous of are people like you who can do some code, who can do some of the technology that I can't do. Well, that's changed. And they're seeing in 2025, according to Neil Patel and Eric Sue, everyone needs to check out Marketing School Podcast. If you want to really know what's going on and the truth, Neil and Eric bring it every day, and it's such education, and that's why I recommend any founder of a business to do this. But what I learned, Chris, from this is that no longer the developers are not now entrepreneurs that can't write code, cannot think, now can create any product or service they want. They don't need developers anymore. So they're going to be the ones that are going to be leading the way to create new products in 2025. Compared to the developers, they're going to have to start wearing the CEO hat when they're used to wearing the development hat. So it's a really strange twist of things that are happening thanks to AI. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I've been wrestling with this one myself as we started off originally as a web development agency. And so naturally we progressed into product consulting, which is what we do today. And now with this rapid shift of AI, it's becoming even more prevalent, as you mentioned, that a lot of companies are using AI to sort of do their own product building. But I'd argue to say that developers still have a great place in the IT world, because what's starting to happen is the lower level functioning, the lower level coding a landing page, super easy for you, Neil, right? But as you start to think about more complex apps and platforms, there still needs to be a product lead in those organizations. You can't just throw a feature prompt in the AI, unfortunately, at this point, and it expected to come out exactly the way you hope to. So I think what companies are going to start doing now is finding AI prompt
Right.
engineers
Engineers.
that
Yeah.
know how to also fix any code
Prompt.
that the AI sort of spits out. And that's where you'll start to see a lot of that specialization. And I think you'll start to find that companies will focus more on the product itself, because if we aren't necessarily focused on building out architectures and whole feature sets, we could spend more time with the customers doing sales and those things. So it is a double-edged sword, right? As I look at the tech industry right now. We had over 400,000 layoffs just last year alone, and that's a big uncertainty in terms of like what is the future. And one of the things that I always tell folks is, especially in this age, is start retooling, right? Because if you feel like you're left behind, start learning new courses, new certifications, really to make sure you're kept abreast of different AI technologies, and start being an AI assistant engineer, right?
Exactly. And
Because
they're already being
yeah, it's
developed. A lot of them are
huge.
being developed in the back end, but what they're saying is the groundbreaking stuff, Chris. I know companies, they're not going to lay off. They're already looking at laying off what AI can replace. That's the concern of the big corporations. But when you're talking about new ideas, they're saying that entrepreneurs now can take their idea and create it themselves than having to go to a developer. So developers now have to build a brand, start getting out there to compete with people who are just idea guys, CEOs, idea guys versus the developers that were developing the technology for the idea guys. Just so this is where the challenge comes out, that people who are used to being in the developmental studio working as the chief product officer or chief the CIO now has to wear a different hat and learn to be a CEO, learn to be more front face, more client facing because of where we're seeing things change. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and this is a natural progression into user experience, right? Like now that we don't have to spend so much on development and costs, we can now focus on what's the best experience to get human beings in the process, right? One thing that's not going away: user experience design and UI graphics, right? Like that's not going anywhere in the IT world. So I think it'll become more prevalent for companies to really get more in tune with their customers. But one thing that they should consider, we've seen a lot of layoffs, and we're seeing companies trade off technical work for these short-term AI agents, right? And really, the biggest thing I would just caution as you're making that decision is, um, who is still going to manage our AI agents, right? Because if you want a full AI agent workforce, that's great, but who's managing and verifying all of those different pieces? So as you're thinking about, okay, how can I integrate AI into my
Right.
business? Who's that AI tech partner?
Right.
And
And I think
that's
that,
something that we're starting to work with now too.
so what do you
Client.
think, as you and I are alike in certain ways, but different in certain ways? I was always sales and client facing more and public more, where my team would do all the tech side. I'm a little techie, but not to the level. Well, you're more techie that's now learning. I got to become more and more public. How does that make you feel? Do you understand what I'm saying? That you can, we're to the public end where I got to be out before I offer this thing that can't be beat in my
Right.
competitive edge. That has changed now for someone like me. It says, okay, I can create it myself. I just came up with an idea. I'm going to create this AI bot. I'm going to bring in people, but I'm going to bring in smart people to follow my plan. But ultimately, I don't have to hire an expensive developer now.
Yeah. No, that's
So, and then how do you put those things in the tool shed? And we're talking about the newest ideas, the most important things. And this would be a great to bring Muhammad on and get his idea, because Muhammad's more like me, that has decided to use AI to do everything.
yeah. There's two different perspectives you could have. You could have the glass half full approach, which is what I have, which means, hey, AI is coming, change is happening. Let me retool myself, reskill, become not just an AI provider, but I want to, like the gold rush in the early 18 or late 1800s. I don't want to be the person going in and picking the gold. I want to be the seller of the shovels, right? So finding different ways to position yourself with this new market change, that's sort of where my approach has been. You can think of it from the other perspective of it's half empty, and you can be like, oh well, like I might need to close my agency and do all of that, but you should at least try to make the change first and then see how it works for your business. Because I don't, humans were made to adapt, right? And it's either in business is either adapt or die. And I don't know about you, but I want to live in 2025, especially in business, considering the chaos. So do what you can to adapt. Your whole product
Yeah.
doesn't have to
Yeah.
be AI, but maybe there's some
This has
AI-assisted
a lot of
pieces.
similarity to COVID
Uh,
in 2020.
Very much
It
so.
has a lot of similarities. And I really didn't take the bull by the horns in 2020 and saw the opportunity. I wasn't ready for that opportunity, especially Clubhouse. If I would have had a correct strategy in place and seen, well, this is like Fantasyland, go into another platform and people buy from me on stage. And what if I would have done things differently? We all look at these things when these opportunities present ourselves and they disappear. This
Yeah.
one here has to be you, as Neil Patel, Eric Sue said this. Eric said, if you do not improve yourself and become better and better, they're the only ones that are going to stay along. The rest are
Right.
going to are gone.
Yeah, this is the most defining moment for tech right now. And what you do today surely defines for your future what you have in store. So I encourage everybody reassess what you're doing, take a look at what the market's asking for, and retool appropriate. AI doesn't have to be the identity, but you need to address it in some capacity, right? Otherwise, you get lost in the wind.
And one thing I'd love to do in this podcast is model for you guys ChatGPT, making them your CFO, CEO, CMO, and just see what they would say to you if your company's on the right track. Chris, I think it's because of all the prompts I've done. I've trained it pretty well. It knows me very well. It even knows exactly what my next step is. That's scary. But for an average person that has really not used AI, they need to look at that. But if you want to get your product out, your brand out, start a podcast, all those things, Chris, where's the best place they can go?
Yeah, you can follow us on LinkedIn at UX Bright, or go to uxbright.com. That's UXBRIT.